Ever had one of those days where everything just feels off? You walk into a place expecting one thing and get something completely different. Well, hold on to your hats because this story is about to take that feeling to a whole new level. We're talking about a black CEO, a five-star luxury hotel, and a moment of discrimination that led to one of the most epic comebacks you'll ever hear. Mr. Malik Ward, the most powerful black CEO, walked into that marble lobby like any other guest, calm, private, carrying a name that paid for the chandeliers above him. The woman behind the desk saw a hoodie, not a resume. She saw skin, not a resume. The words were small, the gesture tiny, a refusal wrapped in a lie. But the silence that followed was loud enough to echo around the room. Malik Ward had built an empire from code and trust. The hotel manager had given him none. What happened next would not be a shout or a lawsuit at first. It would be a quiet accounting, a deliberate unmasking that would ripple through boardrooms, social feeds, and tax ledgers. Malik did not storm out. He did not explode. He smiled, checked into the suite he had booked, and left the hotel with a contract that could wipe the lobby clean of pretense. In less than 48 hours, the front desk that refused him would be empty, the staff scattered, and the owner would be filing apologies that could not pay for the loss. This is not revenge written in fire. It is the slow, exact science of consequence. Malik Ward stepped into the hotel as if it were any other address on his calendar. Tall, composed, his hoodie tucked under a charcoal blazer, he placed the light of a single man's confidence into the palm of a glass and marble lobby. The chandeliers hummed with the kind of wealth that was practiced quietly. No flash, just presence. He had made the reservation 3 months earlier. The booking confirmation had been sent by an assistant with a neat subject line: Penthouse reservation, Malik Ward, 1 night. Malik did not need the room to prove anything. This night was part business and part palate cleanser. A pause from the press of meetings, a place to think. At the front desk, a young woman looked up. Her name tag read Sarah. Her eyes scanned Malik with that thin strip of judgment people think is invisible. The cursor blinked on her screen, and for 10 minutes the world narrowed to polite refusals and a small, undecorated lie. "We don't have anything available tonight," she said, her voice measured, rehearsed. She kept her hands folded as if they might clam up into a posture of detached service. A man behind her shifted, one of those colleagues who believed small jokes were the oil of workplace bonding. He laughed softly. Malik felt it, a short ripple of air meant to separate him from the room. He smiled. The smile was careful, not confronting. "My reservation is under Malik Ward," he said. He placed his phone on the desk so she could see the confirmation. The display read clearly the dates and the suite reserved in his name. Sarah's fingers hovered. She typed something, scrolled. The man who'd been watching took the phone and squinted at the screen, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something less true. A whisper passed between them. One of the staff, loud enough for the 2 people beside the desk to hear, said, "He probably can't afford a single night here." The words were small and toxic. They landed like grit in Malik's throat. He listened to the small sentence as if it were an instrument played badly. It hurt not because of the sound, but because of the presumption that worth could be judged by a jacket, a hoodie, a skin tone. In Malik's life, there had been more than one lunch where plates had been pushed away, more than one invitation that ended with silence and the leaning back of a chair. He had learned the language of loss and how sometimes dignity demanded a response so measured that it became unignorable. A manager arrived. He introduced himself with a formalness that felt like a curtain drop. He typed Malik's name. He looked up. Then his face changed. The manager's jaw slackened the way it does when the truth arrives late. The screen spelled out the penthouse number. The date matched. Credit was on file. Everything the receptionist had denied was sitting in the hotel's own records. The apology began like a rain attempt at washing away an oil spill. Hesitant, a few words thrown in the air. "I am so sorry, sir. There must have been a mistake. Please accept our apologies. We can upgrade you, provide dinner." Malik allowed the apology to flow without interruption. He accepted the keys with the same quiet control he had used on arrival. Inside the elevator, he took a breath and closed his eyes. The penthouse was immaculate and enormous. He moved through it with the slow curiosity of a man who had built things from scratch and wanted to understand how this place had been structured. He thought of how easily, Reputation and service sometimes drifted into the same current as prejudice. The hotel, carefully curated, promised things with the roar of marble and staff in neat uniforms. Yet at the desk, the promise had been withheld. It was a tiny act, but one that told a story much larger than the lobby. That night, Malik did something most guests would not do. He slept in the penthouse, but he also listened. He listened to the staff through the floorboards, a soft conversation the next morning between the housekeeper and a supervisor. He left a note in the suite's guest log, "Do better." He could have left louder marks, social posts, screenshots, dramatic posts. He could have held press conferences. There are many ways to make an injustice loud. But Malik had spent his life testing the difference between noise and consequence. The next morning, he descended to the lobby not angry but resolved. The manager hurried over with a freshly printed apology and a tray of offers. Dinners, comped nights, a VIP account. It was the conventional salve for a conventional wrong. It felt small. Malik stood, the lobby's light making a strip of halo around the manager's tidy hair. He did not raise his voice. He spoke in a tone that demanded hearing, a tone shaped by years of decisions and restraint. "I appreciate the apology," he said, "but I wasn't here for a vacation. I was here scouting for my company's annual conference. We book more than 500 rooms and conference space for a full week. We would have brought the entire event here." The manager's color left his face. All at once, the problem moved from personal to fiscal. Apologies were not currency in that room anymore. The apologies were small, paper reins trying to stop a tracking collapse. Malik continued, "Not malicious but exact. Based on what happened yesterday, I cannot in good conscience bring my team to a place where members of my staff might be judged by appearance. I will be informing my procurement team and fellow executives about my experience." The manager fumbled. He offered more freebies, more promises. Malik listened and then handed the manager a small card with his business contact, a line for procurement and corporate bookings. "I will send a note to my contacts," he said. "Not because I want to punish you, but because I want to protect my people." He left the way he had arrived, steady, polite, leaving the stunned lobby behind him. The staff watched a man walk who had been denied, then accepted, and then quietly told them their behavior had consequences. The manager had the words for regret, but Malik had the resource the manager did not, a network and the power to withdraw millions in future bookings. Malik had not shouted. He had written a bill in quiet currency, the currency of lost business and professional trust. It was small, exact, and unavoidable. In the days to follow, that bill would be cashed. The elevator doors closed behind Malik Ward with a soft hiss, shutting out the noise of the lobby. Inside the mirrored space, he finally exhaled. The tension that had wrapped around his shoulders began to loosen, but not completely. Even silence in a place like this carried the echo of what had just happened downstairs. As the elevator rose, each floor number blinked with quiet rhythm, 12, 13, 14, like a countdown to reflection. Malik looked at his own face in the mirrored wall. The expression staring back wasn't anger. It was something colder, steadier. He'd seen this look before, in boardrooms where partners doubted him, in conferences where investors mistook him for an assistant. It wasn't new, but every time it happened, it left a scar that refused to fade. When the elevator stopped, the doors opened to a private hallway. The penthouse suite waited with gold trim, soft lighting, and an ocean view that glittered under the night sky. He swiped the keycard, and the door clicked open. The first thing Malik noticed wasn't luxury. It was silence. Expensive silence. The kind that could almost convince someone the world outside didn't exist. He placed his briefcase on the marble counter, loosened his tie, and walked toward the window. The city lights below blinked like 1,000 stories. People living, struggling, thriving. He took out his phone and stared at a photo on the lock screen. His mother smiling, arms around him on graduation day. He could still hear her voice. "Never fight fire with fire, baby. Let your success be the flame they can't put out." She had raised him alone in a small apartment in Detroit, juggling 3 jobs and 1,000 dreams. Malik had watched her turn exhaustion into determination. He'd learned early that sometimes silence could be louder than shouting, when used right. He poured himself a glass of water from the minibar and sat on the couch. The humiliation from earlier still burned, but he forced himself to replay it calmly. Every word, every glance, every smirk from that front desk. He wasn't angry at Sarah, the receptionist, not exactly. He was angry at the comfort she felt in her assumption that he didn't belong, that his money, his achievements, his status, none of it mattered against the color of his skin. But Malik wasn't going to tweet about it or call a lawyer. No. His power didn't need volume. It needed precision. He opened his laptop and began typing. It wasn't an angry message. It was a professional one, directed to his company's procurement director and event planning team. Please remove the Grand Regency Hotel from our shortlist for the annual conference. We'll discuss alternatives tomorrow morning. I'll explain the reason on call. He hit send. That single line, simple as it was, had the weight of millions of dollars behind it. The Grand Regency didn't know it yet, but they had just lost a golden opportunity. Not because of a lawsuit or protest, but because of a man's silent decision. Malik closed the laptop. He walked to the balcony and looked out over the city again. Somewhere down there, that same manager was probably trying to explain to his staff how they'd handled it. Maybe he even believed the apology had fixed everything. But Malik knew better. Real lessons come when comfort is interrupted. He leaned on the railing and thought about the irony. The same hands that typed his reservation had tried to erase it. And tomorrow he would erase their name from a deal worth 7 figures. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. He turned. At the door stood a middle-aged woman in a housekeeper's uniform. Her badge read Clara. "Excuse me, sir," she said quietly. "I'm here to check if everything's all right with your suite." "Just a routine check." Malik nodded. "Everything's fine." "Thank you," but Clara hesitated. "I heard what happened downstairs. Earlier, I was near the lobby. Some of us, we didn't agree with it. I'm sorry you had to go through that." Her voice was soft but sincere. Malik studied her face, weary eyes, kindness beneath the uniform. "Thank you," he said gently. "You didn't do anything wrong." "But I appreciate that." She hesitated again, then added, "You should know, sir, that manager, he's done that before. To others, not everyone complains." Malik's eyes sharpened. "Is that so?" Clara nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. Especially people of color. He treats them differently. Staff talk about it, but we can't do much. He's connected." Malik's expression didn't change, but inside, a plan began to form. This wasn't just an isolated insult, it was a pattern. A culture. Something deep-rooted. "Thank you, Clara," he said finally. "That means more than you think." When she left, Malik sat down again, his mind racing. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about accountability. If this was happening to others, maybe he was meant to be the one to end it. He pulled out his phone and recorded a quick voice note. "Remember, dignity isn't silence. It's strategy." He smiled faintly and saved it. That night, Malik didn't sleep much. The city lights outside blinked like restless thoughts. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, he made a promise to himself. This wasn't over. He wouldn't shout. He wouldn't rage. But the next morning, the hotel would begin to understand the cost of disrespect. Not in anger, but in numbers. And that cost would multiply. Morning sunlight filtered through the penthouse windows, touching the walls with a soft golden haze. Malik Ward stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie. He looked calm. Too calm for a man who'd been humiliated less than 12 hours ago. But Malik had learned long ago that calmness was its own kind of weapon. He had already made a few quiet moves. His procurement team had received his midnight email and confirmed removal of the Grand Regency Hotel from their list. But that was just the beginning. He wasn't interested in one act of revenge. He wanted awareness, a mirror held up to the people who thought status erased accountability. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his assistant, Jasmine. "Good morning, sir. Confirming tomorrow's conference with the City Hotel executives. Do you still want to include Grand Regency on the invite list?" Malik typed a short reply. "Yes, let them attend." He smiled faintly. The lesson wasn't over yet. A knock came at the door. It was the same manager from last night, Mr. Collins, his face flushed and nervous. His hands clutched a folder like a peace offering. "Mr. Ward, good morning." Collins began with a strained smile. "I hope your night was comfortable, sir?" "It was," Malik replied smoothly. "The suite is beautiful." Collins nodded, forcing a laugh. "We're grateful to have you, sir." Wanted to personally apologize again for what happened at check-in. I can assure you it was an unfortunate misunderstanding. Sarah's new, she didn't recognize. Malik interrupted quietly. Didn't recognize him what? The question was sharp, though spoken softly. Collins swallowed hard. Didn't recognize. Your reservation details, of course. Of course. Malik's expression didn't change. He let the silence stretch just long enough to make the manager shift uncomfortably. Collins cleared his throat. We'd like to make it right. I've arranged complimentary meals for your stay and a 50% discount on future bookings. Also, he opened the folder. We'd like to feature your company's logo in our business guest partnership program. Malik took a slow breath. That's generous, he said evenly. But unnecessary, the manager blinked. Unnecessary? Yes, Malik said, stepping closer. Because you won't be seeing any future bookings for my company. The words landed like glass breaking in the quiet room. Collins froze, unsure if he'd heard correctly. I beg your pardon, sir? Malik turned and walked toward the window, hands clasped behind his back. Last night I was treated as if I didn't belong here. Not by one employee, by a culture that allows those assumptions to exist. I've been in business long enough to know that prejudice isn't a slip. It's a pattern. Collins's face paled. Mr. Ward, please, Malik turned back. His voice was calm, but it carried a power that filled the space. I was planning to host my company's annual conference here. Over 500 rooms, a full week of events, catering, and media coverage. It would have been a partnership worth millions. But after what happened last night, I can't, in good conscience, bring my team or my guests here. The color drained from the manager's face completely. He looked like a man who'd just been told his house was on fire. Sir, please, this is a terrible misunderstanding. We'll handle it immediately. I'll retrain the staff, issue a public apology, anything. Malik cut him off gently. I'm not here for an apology, Mr. Collins. I'm here for accountability. Those are two very different things. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the city below filled the silence. Car horns, distant voices, the faint hum of life continuing as usual. Finally, Malik said, I don't need to shout or post about this online. I don't need to ruin reputations. The truth has a way of traveling on its own. He turned and began packing his bag. I'll be checking out in an hour. Collins, desperate now, blurted, Mr. Ward, please reconsider. We can host your conference at no cost. I'll speak with the owner myself. Malik stopped him with a look. I'm not doing this for a discount. You can't buy back respect, Mr. Collins. You can only earn it. The manager's voice faltered. Sir, if this goes public... Malik zipped his bag and straightened his blazer. You're worried about the wrong thing. You should be worried about what kind of people represent your brand. He walked toward the door but paused before leaving. One more thing, he said quietly. You should talk to your staff. Some of them know what's really going on here. One of them told me last night that this wasn't the first time someone was treated this way. Collins' eyes widened. His lips trembled slightly. Who said that? Malik smiled faintly. That's not the point. The point is you have a problem much bigger than a bad review. Fix it before it fixes you. He stepped out into the hallway, leaving the manager standing there like a man watching his own job slip away in real time. Down in the lobby, Malik checked out with a calm face. Sarah, the young receptionist from last night, avoided his eyes. Her cheeks were flushed. Her hands trembled slightly as she processed his checkout. When she handed him the receipt, Malik paused. You'll remember me, he said softly. But more importantly, I hope you remember how this felt, and never do it to anyone again. Sarah nodded wordlessly, tears glistening in her eyes. Malik gave a short, polite nod and turned to leave. Outside, the morning air felt lighter. He could hear the city waking, the shuffle of feet, the sound of car engines, the murmur of ambition. It reminded him of the days when he had nothing but faith and fire. He slid into his car, a black Mercedes waiting by the curb. Before the driver pulled away, Malik made one last call. To his assistant, Jasmine. Good morning, Jasmine. Make sure the Regency is removed from our system completely. Send a courtesy note to the local business bureau about our decision. Politely, of course. No drama, just the truth. Yes, sir, Jasmine replied. Should I tell the board why? Malik looked out the window, his eyes sharp but distant. No need. They'll see soon enough. As the car pulled away, the Grand Regency shrank in the rearview mirror. Malik wasn't angry anymore. He was focused, because he knew this was only the first ripple. The real wave was coming, and it would hit harder than anyone expected. Malik Ward sat in the back of the car as the city blurred past his window. His face showed calm, but his mind moved like a careful machine planning each small, exact step. He did not want noise. He wanted effect. He wanted the kind of consequence that made people think twice before they judged anyone again. Back at his office, Malik walked through the glass doors with the same measured pace he used in the hotel. The receptionists greeted him with familiarity. He smiled politely, then went straight to his private office. The penthouse had not been a stage for spectacle. It was a place where he gathered information, measured damage, and then acted. He opened his laptop and drafted a short professional note. It was not for social media. It was not for a press release. It was a line written to people who made decisions about where money and meetings moved. Procurement officers, event directors, and trusted partners he had worked with for years. Subject: conference venue, Grand Regency Hotel colleagues. I was recently a registered guest at the Grand Regency Hotel. During check-in, I experienced treatment that I find unacceptable for a corporate partner. While the hotel has offered an apology, I feel its culture may not align with our company values. Please remove the Grand Regency from our active venue shortlist for events until further notice. I will share more details on our next procurement call. Malik Ward, he sent the email to a list that read like a who's who of conference planning. Names and addresses that controlled rooms, contracts, and catering for dozens of major events. He kept it short. He kept it calm. Words were currency. He used them sparingly. Within minutes, his assistant Jasmine pinged him. Noted. Sending to the board now. A few moments later, his procurement director replied. Understood. Removing Grand Regency from shortlist. We'll search for alternatives. The replies were quiet but quick. Malik felt no need to watch. The wheels of consequence were already turning. Meanwhile, at the Grand Regency, the hotel manager, Mr. Collins, returned to the office late that morning to find his inbox full of messages and his phone buzzing. Tentative requests from companies considering bookings were suddenly on hold. Two major corporate groups that had shown interest in hosting events that quarter called to ask about the incident. The sales manager forwarded an internal message with the subject line, "Urgent, client concerns." Collins's face drained. He had not expected such a fast ripple. He could not see Malik's network, but he could feel its pressure in the empty rhythms of incoming bookings. Down the hall, Clara the housekeeper watched the lobby from a small staff doorway. She had seen Malik leave and had felt something shift in the air. Now, as members of the staff checked their phones and exchanged worried looks, she overheard a senior sales director telling another manager to get ahead of this before it made the rounds. The hotel owner, Mr. Thompson, arrived at the office in a suit that had known better days. He looked around at the faces in the meeting room, Collins, the head of sales, the PR officer, and felt the first real tremor of panic. "Tell me everything," Thompson demanded. His voice was controlled but harsh. He was a man used to solving problems by writing checks. This problem was social. It had no single invoice.
He felt exposed. Collins tried to explain.
He spoke quickly, his hands shaking. He described the apology, the discount offers, the free dinners. He explained Sarah was new, that training was on the schedule, that this was a misunderstanding. The owner listened, then asked a question that cut through the noise. "Did the guest threaten legal action?" Thompson asked. "No, sir." He left politely. "He said he would inform his procurement team," Collins answered. "Then why are we losing calls?" the owner asked. His eyes darted toward the sales director, whose phone kept buzzing. The sales director handed over a printout, a list of canceled tentative bookings and 2 emails from corporate accounts asking for clarification. Thompson's face lost color. He had built this hotel's reputation on discretion and service. Now his phone hummed with the threat of lost revenue. For a moment, the idea of prejudice seemed secondary to the ledger-like numbers flashing in his mind. But then he remembered the public angle. Reputation could be the single sharp knife that cut deeper than a loss of bookings. It would take far longer to repair. Back at Malik's office, he made another quiet call, this time to a trusted friend who ran a venue comparison network. He explained calmly and factually what had happened. He asked only that the Grand Regency be flagged for review when corporations searched for venues. The friend agreed. A small note would appear in the network. Under review. Client feedback pending. No drama. Just a small red flag that would quietly stop large groups from booking the hotel until the issue was resolved. By noon, small ripples had become a visible current. The hotel's sales team tried to put out fires. Extra training, stronger language in employee handbooks. A PR draft promising immediate action. Collins drafted an apology to be shared with the local business community. But every time they tried to create noise, Malik's silence worked against them, because he refused to be loud. He had not called the press. He had not posted screenshots. He had acted through mechanisms that mattered most to a business: procurement lists, conference planners, and vendor networks. Clara watched the staff meeting from the doorway, feeling a cautious hope. She had spoken the truth to a guest and had feared nothing would follow. Now, as managers argued about how to salvage the hotel's brand, she felt that honesty had weight. Maybe small acts mattered more than she had believed. In the afternoon, a call came through to Malik's line from a conference organizer who had received his note. "Mr. Ward," she said politely, "thank you for informing us. We will remove the Grand Regency from our list for now. Would you be willing to share more details on the procurement call tomorrow?" Malik's voice was steady. "I will. But not to humiliate anyone. My goal is to make sure our teams never face this in a place of business. I want accountability and change." He paused. "If the hotel owner wants to speak with me directly and show concrete steps to change culture and policy, I'll listen. Otherwise, this remains on hold." After he hung up, Malik felt the weight of the decision settle like a calm in his chest. He hadn't wanted to shame anyone. He wanted to protect his people and to reshape the places where his teams worked. And now, quietly, that work had started. As the sun set, the Grand Regency held an emergency meeting. They drafted apologies, planned training, and consulted a PR firm. But they also faced the stark truth. Apologies were only the beginning. Real change would cost time, money, and honest work. Malik watched from a distance. He had not shouted. He had not demanded immediate punishment. He had used his influence the way he always did, with care, precision, and patience. The silence he had left in the lobby had become a ripple that would not be easily smoothed. And in the calm between the ripples, Malik prepared for the next step, not for revenge, but for an ending that made sure it never started again. The next morning began quietly at Ward Innovations headquarters, but quiet did not mean still. Malik Ward's short, polite email had already crossed digital oceans. Inside boardrooms and corporate inboxes, a simple note, "Grand Regency Hotel removed from approved venues," had started conversations far louder than any public outcry. By 9 a.m., 3 hospitality agencies called Jasmine, Malik's assistant, asking for clarification. By 10, the story reached the ear of a local business journalist who specialized in corporate ethics. No one had leaked a statement. The journalist had simply noticed a sudden pattern of cancellations linked to the same hotel. Malik had always believed the truth could travel without help, and that morning it did. At the Grand Regency, panic was no longer whispered. It was open. The once polished lobby felt heavier, quieter, as if the marble itself had absorbed the tension. Mr. Collins, the manager, walked briskly through the hallways, his phone glued to his ear. "Sir, we're doing everything we can," he told the hotel's owner. "Mr. Thompson, we've issued internal memos, scheduled diversity training, and I've reached out to Mr. Ward personally." Thompson cut him off. "Personally? And he didn't respond?" "No, sir." The owner's tone dropped, cold and sharp. "Then find another way. We can't lose our corporate contracts over one mistake." But even as he spoke, Thompson knew it wasn't just one mistake. The numbers were already clear. 4 conferences canceled, 2 paused negotiations, and 1 major travel agency reviewing their partnership. The email had become a stone thrown into still water, and every ring of consequence spread wider. In the employee break room, whispers replaced laughter. Some blamed Sarah, the young receptionist. Others blamed management for not defending her fast enough. Sarah sat in the corner, pale and quiet, replaying the night in her head. The words she had said, the tone she had used, each replay felt heavier. She hadn't meant harm, she told herself, but she realized intent didn't matter when harm had been done. Downstairs, Clara, the housekeeper, carried a tray of fresh linens. She passed by the HR office where two supervisors argued in hushed voices. "This can't keep happening," one said. "It's not the first complaint." "It's the first that cost us millions," the other replied grimly. Clara lowered her eyes but felt something stir inside her. A small, hard pride. The world had listened even if Malik Ward had said almost nothing. Across town, Malik attended a short morning meeting with his board. They congratulated him on handling the incident professionally. Some even suggested releasing a statement to gain public goodwill. Malik shook his head. "No need. Dignity doesn't need an audience," he said simply. "We let actions speak." His calm unnerved them, but they trusted him. After the meeting, Jasmine followed him into his office. "Sir, news outlets have started calling," she said quietly. "Should we ignore them?" "For now," Malik replied. "If they ask, just tell them we're reviewing vendor standards. Nothing more." Jasmine nodded, then hesitated. "Sir, do you think they'll learn from this?" Malik looked out the window where sunlight poured across the city skyline. "Maybe," he said softly. "But I'm not doing this to teach one person a lesson. I'm doing it so people who come after us don't have to." Meanwhile, inside the Grand Regency's boardroom, Thompson met with the legal team and PR consultants. Laptops glowed, coffee cups lined the table. The mood was frantic but restrained. A storm wearing a suit. "Damage control," the PR manager said briskly. "We issue a statement, emphasize commitment to equality, maybe feature staff diversity photos." Thompson frowned. "That sounds like paint over a cracked wall." "Then rebuild the wall," another voice said. Collins surprisingly firm. "We've been ignoring this for too long. Mr. Ward wasn't the first guest treated unfairly. He's just the first who had the power to make us see it." The room fell silent. The owner stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we start fixing it, today." Outside, Malik's quiet influence continued to spread. By evening, a small hospitality forum published an anonymous post titled, "When Silence Costs Millions." It described, without names, how one guest's calm decision reshaped corporate ethics overnight. The post went viral among business professionals. No finger-pointing, no scandal, just a moral. And everyone wanted to know who the guest was. At home that night, Malik scrolled through emails on his tablet. A message caught his eye. From an unfamiliar address, clara.staffagrandregency.com. "Mr. Ward, this is Clara, the housekeeper who spoke to you that night. Things are changing here. The owner met with all staff today. They're planning new policies and open forums for employees to speak safely. I just wanted to say thank you." "You didn't shout, but you made them listen." Malik smiled faintly. He typed back, "Clara, thank you. Change begins when someone speaks honestly, not when someone yells. Keep doing that." Later, he put the tablet aside and leaned back on the couch. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet he liked, earned, not empty. For the first time since the incident, he felt peace. But as peace settled, his phone buzzed again. Jasmine's name flashed. "Sir," she said, breathless. The local business paper just published a front-page article about the Grand Regency incident. They didn't name you directly, but everyone knows. The headline reads, "Prestige Hotel Loses Major Corporate Client After Bias Allegation." It's spreading fast. Malik sighed. Let it spread. Maybe the noise will finish what silence started. By the next morning, news outlets across the state picked up the story. Social media filled with discussions about discrimination in hospitality. Some defended the hotel, others demanded accountability. The Grand Regency issued a formal statement. "We acknowledge that one of our valued guests experienced service inconsistent with our values. We are implementing new training, reviewing hiring practices, and opening a community dialogue to ensure equal treatment for all guests." The statement ended with an apology. Polished, corporate, safe. Yet people noticed the missing name. They wanted the story behind the story. For Malik, that was fine. The lesson didn't need his face. The message was enough. He had already moved on to the next step, ensuring the ripple became a permanent wave. He drafted one more internal memo to his team. "Every vendor we partner with must undergo a culture review before approval. It's not about punishment, it's about partnership. We build with people who build everyone." It was simple. It was final. That evening, Malik sat by his office window watching the city lights blink on. Somewhere out there, a hotel owner was realizing that discrimination was no longer invisible. Somewhere, a manager was learning that apologies without change meant nothing. And somewhere, a quiet ripple was still moving, through policies, contracts, and consciences, carrying the weight of one man's silence. The Grand Regency's lobby had never been so quiet. Even the hum of conversation had thinned into tension. Staff whispered in corners, their smiles brittle, their steps careful. News had spread fast and faster than the management could contain it. What had begun as a single complaint had become a business storm with no clear edges. Owner Richard Thompson sat behind his mahogany desk, staring at the latest financial report. His fingers tapped the table rhythmically, the sound of a man counting problems instead of profits. Across from him, Mr. Collins, the general manager, stood with his shoulders tight. "Tell me again," Thompson said. His voice was low, tight with restrained anger. "How does one man's reservation cost me 4 corporate accounts, 2 investor meetings, and a week's worth of cancellations?" Collins swallowed hard. "Sir, Mr. Ward isn't just any guest. He's connected, highly respected in the corporate circuit. He's a CEO. Word traveled through procurement channels faster than we expected." The owner slammed the folder shut. "I don't care how respected he is. Fix it." Collins hesitated. "Sir, we've issued a public apology. We've contacted his office several times, but he hasn't responded." "Of course he hasn't," Thompson snapped. "He doesn't need to. He's got everyone else doing the talking for him." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Do you realize what this means for us? This isn't just lost revenue. It's reputation. Every partner, every conference organizer is suddenly reviewing us. And all because one manager couldn't control a front desk." Collins bit his lip. "With respect, sir, it wasn't just the front desk. It's culture. People notice things. They talk." Thompson's glare froze him. But even as he scolded his employee, he knew the truth. Collins was right. There had been murmurs before, about subtle bias, about certain guests getting different treatment. He had dismissed them as overreactions. Now he was paying the price for every ignored complaint. He stood up suddenly. "Call a meeting. PR, HR, legal, everyone. I want a full strategy in 1 hour." Collins nodded and hurried out. By noon, the hotel's conference room looked like a war room. Laptops glowed, papers scattered, the air thick with caffeine and fear. The PR director, Janet, spoke first. "We need to control the story before it controls us. Right now, we're the villain in every conversation. We have to issue something sincere, not just corporate talk." The HR head, Megan, added, "We also need real action. We can't talk about inclusion without showing it. Training programs, hiring reforms, and something visible." Thompson rubbed his jaw. "Fine, do it. But quietly. I don't want another headline about this." Janet exchanged a look with Collins. "Sir, that's not how this works. Transparency is what people demand now. Silence will look like guilt." Thompson's voice hardened. "I built this hotel on silence. Privacy is our brand. And that silence," Janet said carefully, "just cost us our biggest clients." The words landed heavy. For the first time, Thompson didn't reply. He just sat back, staring at the window, where the reflection of his own face looked tired, smaller than he remembered. Finally, he sighed. "All right. Draft the statement. Schedule training. But I want results. I want to see rooms filled again." Later that evening, after hours of meetings and damage control, Collins received a message from the front desk. "A Mr. Ward's assistant is on the line." His heart skipped. He picked up immediately. "This is Collins," a calm professional voice spoke. "Mr. Collins, this is Jasmine. I'm Mr. Ward's assistant. He received your emails." Collins exhaled with relief. "That's wonderful. Please tell him we're deeply sorry for the incident. We're taking every step to ensure—" She cut him off politely. "Mr. Ward appreciates your apology. He's aware of your new policies and your statement." Collins's tone brightened. "Then perhaps we can meet to discuss. However," Jasmine continued, "he won't be accepting your offers or future partnerships at this time." The light in Collins's voice dimmed instantly. "May I ask why?" Her tone stayed calm. "Because Mr. Ward doesn't want a seat at a table that once refused him service. He believes true change begins when you fix the culture, not when you chase the client." Before Collins could respond, she added, "He wishes your staff well and hopes this lesson serves more than just business." Click. The line went dead. Collins sank back into his chair. For the first time he understood, and this wasn't revenge. This was correction. The next morning, local news stations picked up the Grand Regency's apology. But instead of sympathy, it sparked debate. One commentator said, "The hotel's apology sounds scripted. Where's accountability?" Another said, "It's not about one guest. It's about patterns. If a CEO faced this, imagine what happens to ordinary people." The hashtag #TAR Service and Skin began trending, a discussion on hidden bias in luxury spaces. The Grand Regency became the unwilling face of a larger conversation. Meanwhile, Malik stayed silent. He didn't tweet. He didn't speak to reporters. Instead, he focused on work, his usual calm demeanor steady as stone. But inside, he knew this story had grown beyond him, and that was the point. At the end of the day, Jasmine entered his office. "Sir," she said softly, "the hotel owner himself called. He'd like a personal meeting. He said he wants to apologize face to face." Malik looked up from his desk. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then finally, "Tell him I'll think about it." Jasmine nodded and left. Malik leaned back in his chair, staring at the city skyline. The sunset painted everything gold, a color that reminded him of something his mother used to say. Gold only shines after it's been through fire. He wasn't sure yet whether he'd meet the owner. But he knew one thing. The fire had started and it wasn't done burning. That night, Thompson stood alone in the empty conference room. He looked out over his empire. The glittering chandeliers, the polished floors, the marble silence. Everything still looked perfect, yet everything had changed. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to Collins. "Find out what we can do to make this right. Not just for business, for good." It was the first honest message he'd sent in years. Outside, rain began to fall against the glass and quiet. Cleansing, constant, and somewhere across town, Malik watched that same rain from his apartment window, knowing that sometimes the storm wasn't there to destroy. Sometimes it was there to wash away the dirt so something new could grow. Rain washed over the Grand Regency like quiet punishment. The glass doors reflected streaks of lightning. But inside the hotel, another kind of storm brewed. One made of whispers, regret, and fear. Owner Richard Thompson sat in his office, eyes heavy from sleepless nights. On his desk lay the morning's headlines. Grand Regency under fire for discriminatory service. CEO's silent boycott costs hotel millions. He didn't need to read the articles. He already knew what they said. That one man's calm response had done what lawsuits and protests often failed to do. Make silence unprofitable. Across the hall, Mr. Collins stood with HR Director Megan and PR Officer Janet, each holding thick folders. The investigation had begun, and the results were worse than anyone expected. Megan spoke first. "We've interviewed 32 staff members. Almost everyone admits hearing inappropriate comments at some point. Not just about Mr. Ward, but about other guests too." Janet added quietly, "There were previous complaints, sir. 3 formal reports in the last 2 years. None of them followed up." Thompson's head dropped. 3? "Yes," she said softly. "They were dismissed by management as misunderstandings." Mr. Collins clenched his jaw. "That was before my time," he said quickly. But even he knew that didn't matter. The hotel's pattern was bigger than any one person. It was a culture, and it was bleeding through every polished surface. Thompson turned to the window, staring at the rain. "The man we insulted built an empire on integrity," he murmured. "And we built ours on appearance." For the first time, his voice carried something close to shame. The following days blurred into a series of interviews. Staff members who once smiled for guests now sat nervously across from HR officers, confessing what they had seen, what they had ignored, and what they had pretended not to notice. Sarah, the receptionist who had denied Malik's room, sat trembling. Her hands twisted a tissue until it tore. "I didn't mean to," she began, her voice cracking. Megan stopped her gently. "Sarah, this isn't about intent. It's about what happened." Tears slid down Sarah's cheeks. "He was so calm. I thought he didn't belong here. The way he dressed, the way he—" She stopped, ashamed. "I realize now it wasn't him. It was me." Outside the interview room, Clara waited her turn. When her name was called, she entered, shoulders squared. She wasn't nervous, just ready. She sat down and looked directly at Megan. I told him the truth that night, Clara said. I told Mr. Ward this wasn't the first time. We all knew. We just didn't have anyone to listen. Megan nodded. You did the right thing. Because of that, we can finally make changes. Clara's eyes softened. I hope so. But changes don't mean anything unless they reach the people at the top. Those words stuck with Megan long after the meeting ended. By the end of the week, Thompson had a full report in his hands. It was more than data. It was a confession written in spreadsheets and testimonies. He spent hours reading every word. When he finished, he sat back, his breath shallow. His empire, his pride, had become a mirror, one that showed him everything he had refused to see. He picked up his phone and called Collins. Gather the staff, he said. All of them. Lobby, 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, the entire hotel team stood in a half-circle beneath the grand chandelier, the same one that had glittered above Malik Ward when he was denied his room. Now that chandelier felt like an audience of ghosts. Thompson stepped forward, no longer polished or proud. He looked tired but sincere. I built this place with the belief that luxury meant perfection, he began. But I was wrong. True luxury isn't marble floors or crystal lights. It's respect. It's dignity. He paused, scanning the faces, some fearful, some hopeful. What happened here, he continued, is not who I wanted us to be. But it happened under my roof, and that means it's my responsibility. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even Collins looked surprised. Thompson's voice deepened. Today I'm announcing immediate reforms, leadership changes, diversity audits, and new community training, not to save our reputation but to rebuild our values. He hesitated. Mr. Ward showed us something without raising his voice. He reminded us that silence can cost more than words. So from this moment forward, silence will no longer live in this building. There was a long, heavy pause. Then quietly, someone began to clap. It was Clara. Others joined, hesitantly at first, then louder. It wasn't applause for triumph. It was applause for truth. Meanwhile, Malik sat in his office, scrolling through an article titled, Grand Regency Launches Diversity Reforms After Investigation. He read the words carefully, slowly. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like validation. A confirmation that dignity could bend even the most rigid walls. Jasmine walked in holding her tablet.
Sir, the hotel's owner issued a public apology again.
This time it sounded different, real. Malik looked up. Different how? He didn't mention business, Jasmine said. He mentioned humanity. Malik leaned back, thoughtful. Then maybe he's starting to get it. He turned the screen off. For a moment, silence filled the room, peaceful, earned silence. Then his phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. Mr. Ward, this is Richard Thompson, owner of the Grand Regency. I'd like to meet in person, not for business, for understanding. Malik stared at the message for a long time. His instinct told him to ignore it. But something deeper, something his mother once called grace with boundaries, made him pause. He typed back, 1 meeting. Tomorrow at noon, my office. He hit send and placed the phone down. Tomorrow, silence would meet accountability face to face. In his apartment, Malik stood by the window, city lights flickering like restless stars. He thought of Clara, of Sarah, of Thompson, each a thread in a web of learning. He thought about how life sometimes chose strange teachers. He remembered his mother's words again. Don't just win, Malik. Heal something on your way. He exhaled slowly. The storm outside had softened to drizzle. Tomorrow would not be about revenge. It would be about closure. The next day, sunlight cut through the tall windows of Ward Innovations headquarters, spreading across glass tables and steel frames. The air inside the building carried a quiet authority, the kind that came not from money but from earned respect. At exactly noon, the front desk called Malik's office. Sir, said the receptionist, Mr. Richard Thompson has arrived. Malik stood, straightened his suit jacket, and nodded. Send him in. Moments later, the door opened. Thompson stepped in, older, smaller than his reputation, his confident stride now replaced by something humble. His expensive watch caught the light, but his eyes didn't carry power. They carried guilt. Malik extended a hand. Mr. Thompson. Thompson hesitated a moment, then shook it. Firm, respectful, sincere. "Mr. Ward," he said quietly, "thank you for agreeing to see me." They sat across from each other, the man once denied dignity, and the man who allowed that denial to happen under his roof. Between them rested the silence of understanding, the kind that doesn't need words to acknowledge wrong. Malik broke it first. "You didn't have to come here. You could have sent another email." Thompson nodded. "I could have. But that's how this started, with people sending emails instead of showing up." Malik's expression stayed neutral. "So why are you here, Mr. Thompson?" The older man sighed. "To listen, and to say I'm sorry. Not just for what happened to you, but for what I allowed to happen under my leadership." Malik studied him. "That's a start." Thompson leaned forward. "When this first happened, I was angry. I blamed my staff, the media, even you. But when I read the investigation reports, I realized the problem wasn't my employees, it was me. I created a culture that confused perfection with prejudice. I taught them to judge who looked like our guests instead of serving them as humans." He paused, voice shaking slightly. "And it took your silence to make me hear that." Malik's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. "You know," he said slowly, "I wasn't planning to teach anyone anything. I just didn't want my team to face what I did." "I understand," Thompson said. "I can't undo the damage, but I can change what comes next." Malik folded his hands. "What have you changed?" Thompson took out a small folder and placed it on the table. Inside were printed pages, new policies, training programs, signed letters from staff acknowledging reform commitments. "We've launched an open-door policy," he explained. "Anonymous reporting, anti-bias training, staff mentorship. We're hiring a diversity consultant, and we're funding scholarships for hospitality students from underrepresented backgrounds. In your mother's name, if you'd allow it." Malik froze. "My mother's name?" "Yes," Thompson said softly. "Clara mentioned how often you spoke about her. She inspired you. We'd like that inspiration to reach others." For a long moment, Malik said nothing. The memory of his mother, her smile, her voice, her strength, rose in his mind like light breaking through fog. He looked at Thompson. "You didn't have to do that. I know," Thompson said. "But I wanted to." Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was cleansing. Malik finally spoke. "You're trying to make things right. I respect that. But understand this. It's not forgiveness that fixes the world. It's follow-through." Thompson nodded, eyes glistening. "Then hold me to it." Malik stood and walked to the window. Below, the city stretched endlessly. Cars, people, stories crossing paths. "You know what the hardest part of being a black man in business is, Mr. Thompson?" he said quietly. "It's not failure. It's being questioned. Even when you've earned every step, you start learning to carry your dignity like armor." He turned back. "When I walked into your hotel, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for rest. Instead, I found a reminder that power means nothing if it can't protect others." Thompson lowered his head. "You've done more than that, Mr. Ward. You protected people you've never even met." Malik nodded slowly. "Maybe that's what this was meant to be." A long pause followed. Then Thompson stood and extended his hand again. "Thank you," he said, voice trembling, "for giving me the chance to face this instead of running from it." Malik shook his hand, firm, steady. "Thank yourself. You showed up." As Thompson turned to leave, Malik added quietly, "Mr. Thompson?" The man stopped. Malik smiled faintly. "Make sure the next person who walks into your lobby feels welcomed before you know their name." Thompson smiled back, a genuine, humble smile. "I will." He left the office, and for the first time since this began, Malik felt peace without weight. 2 days later, a photo circulated online, Malik and Thompson shaking hands in Malik's office. It wasn't staged. It had been taken by Jasmine for company records. But somehow the image spread. The caption read, "When accountability meets grace." The post went viral, not because it showed power, but because it showed humility. People commented not about revenge, but about redemption. One user wrote, "He didn't destroy them. He made them better. That's real leadership." Another said, "The loudest victory is often silent." Malik didn't respond to any of it. He didn't need to. The picture said everything. Malik visited his mother's grave at the small cemetery outside the city. The wind rustled the trees, carrying whispers of peace. He laid a single white lily on the stone. "Ma," he whispered, "you were right. The world listens when you stay calm, but only if you make silence mean something." He smiled softly, brushing dust from the letters of her name. "They're naming a scholarship after you. You'd have liked that." As he stood to leave, the sky glowed with the orange light of sunset. For the first time, Malik didn't feel anger or victory. He felt completion, because sometimes revenge isn't fire. It's healing. And sometimes justice doesn't shout, it whispers. 2 weeks had passed since the meeting between Malik Ward and Richard Thompson, but its impact still moved through the city like an unseen current. The photo of their handshake had become a symbol, shared in boardrooms, schools, and church bulletins alike. People called it the moment silence spoke loudest. At Ward Innovations, life returned to routine, yet Malik felt something shift inside him. He had closed a chapter but not the book. True justice, he believed, didn't end when the apology arrived. It began when change took root. That morning, his assistant Jasmine entered with a bright smile. "Sir," she said, "Mr. Thompson just called. He'd like you to visit the Grand Regency today, not for business, but to see the new program you inspired." Malik raised an eyebrow. "Program?" "Yes," she replied. "They're calling it Project Dignity." Malik sat back, intrigued. "Set up a meeting," he said. "And this time book it under my name. No titles, no company." When Malik stepped through the hotel doors that afternoon, the atmosphere felt different. The same chandelier hung above him, but its light seemed softer somehow, warmer. The front desk was busy, yet this time every guest was greeted with equal care. Sarah, the receptionist who had once denied him, stood behind the counter. When she saw Malik, her eyes widened with recognition and a hint of nervousness. She took a breath and stepped forward. "Mr. Ward," she said softly, "I'm glad you're back." Malik nodded. "I'm glad to see you still here." "I almost wasn't," she admitted. "But Mr. Thompson said he wanted to give us a chance to learn, not run away. So I took the training. I've learned a lot." Malik smiled slightly. "That's how change starts, when people stay and face what needs fixing." She nodded gratefully and guided him toward the conference room. Inside, Richard Thompson waited alongside Clara and a small group of staff members. Posters lined the walls. "Respect is our luxury. Every guest matters. Serve the soul, not the status." Thompson extended his hand again. "Welcome back, Mr. Ward." "Thank you," Malik said quietly. "I see things look different." Thompson smiled. "They are. We've launched Project Dignity, a permanent training and mentorship initiative for every employee, from intern to executive. Clara here is our staff advisor for the program." Clara beamed. She looked years younger, confidence lighting her face. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said. "We talk openly now, we listen. And we treat every guest like their family," Thompson continued. "Our staff shares real stories, times they've felt judged or overlooked. We use those stories to train each other. We've partnered with local colleges to create internships for students from underrepresented backgrounds. We even host monthly community forums right here in this lobby." He paused, then added, "We'd like you to be part of it, as a speaker and mentor." Malik looked around the room. He saw faces he recognized, some ashamed, some hopeful, all changed. He took a deep breath. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "when I walked out of this building weeks ago, I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. What you're doing here, this is that." The owner's voice broke slightly. "You taught us without trying to, and for that we're grateful." Malik smiled. "Then let's make sure we teach more than just this hotel. Let's teach the whole industry." A week later, Malik stood on a small stage in the Grand Regency's ballroom, facing a crowd of hotel executives, managers, and students. The event was titled the Dignity Conference. Cameras clicked. Reporters took notes. But Malik didn't speak like a CEO, he spoke like a teacher. "When I walked into this hotel," he began, "no one knew my name. They saw my skin before they saw my reservation. That moment could have made me angry. And for a while it did. But then I realized something important. Anger changes minds for a moment. Dignity changes hearts forever." The room was silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. He continued, "Hospitality means making people feel at home. You can't do that if you build walls with assumptions. If your service doesn't see the human first, then it's not service, it's performance. As he spoke, Sarah watched from the back, tears in her eyes. Clara stood beside her, a hand on her shoulder. Change, Malik said, doesn't start with a policy. It starts with a pause, the moment before you judge someone. That pause is where respect lives. When he finished, the crowd rose in a standing ovation. Thompson walked up and handed him a certificate framed in glass. The Grand Regency Humanity Award, presented to Malik Ward for transforming silence into change. For a moment, Malik just stared at it. He didn't need awards, but this one meant something different. Not for him, but for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. He held the frame up, then said softly, "This isn't my award. This is ours." As the crowd dispersed, Thompson approached. "Mr. Ward," he said quietly, "thank you for turning a mistake into a movement." Malik looked around the room, staff shaking hands, students taking photos, guests smiling in solidarity. "Sometimes," he replied, "the best revenge is a better world." He walked toward the exit, and as he passed the front desk, Sarah called out, "Mr. Ward." He turned. She handed him a small key card. "This is for you," she said. "It's your suite tied on the house. You'll always have a place here." Malik smiled gently. "Thank you, Sarah, but you've already given me something better. Respect." He placed the card back on the counter and walked away, leaving her smiling through tears. That night, as Malik sat by his window, the city lights seemed brighter than usual. He thought of his mother again, and how her lessons had guided him through every storm. He knew now that the truest power wasn't in building empires or winning battles. It was in leaving something behind that made the world a little more fair than you found it. And so Malik Ward closed his eyes, content, knowing that his silence had become a legacy. Months passed since the handshake that changed everything. What began as one man's silent stand inside a hotel lobby had grown into something far greater, a quiet movement that rippled through boardrooms, classrooms, and corporate cultures across the country. The story of Malik Ward and the Grand Regency Hotel became a case study in business ethics courses, diversity workshops, and leadership conferences, not because it was loud, but because it wasn't. Malik's silence had done what outrage often couldn't. It made people listen, reflect, and change. A year later, Malik sat at his office desk, looking over a new proposal, the Dignity Partnership Network, a nationwide coalition of hospitality groups that had joined forces with Ward Innovations to ensure fairness, inclusion, and respect in service industries. Over 40 hotels had signed on, 10 universities were offering scholarships in partnership with the program, and Malik had just received an invitation to speak at Harvard's School of Business about ethical leadership. Jasmine entered the room, carrying a newspaper. "Sir," she said with a proud smile, "you made the front page again." Malik raised an eyebrow. "This time for what?" She grinned. "The Regency's numbers. Their quarterly report says bookings are up 30%, the highest in years. They attribute it to the new trust they've built with guests." Malik smiled faintly. "Good, that means they learned." Jasmine nodded. "They didn't just fix a problem, sir. They started a model. Other hotels are copying their system. You turned an incident into a blueprint." He chuckled softly. "I didn't do anything special. I just refused to stay quiet in the wrong way." But Jasmine shook her head. "No, sir. You showed the world that power doesn't have to shout. It just has to stand its ground." At the Grand Regency, change was visible everywhere. The staff now greeted each guest with warmth that didn't depend on appearance. The lobby's once cold luxury had been replaced with subtle humanity, laughter at the front desk, genuine smiles, the kind of energy that couldn't be faked. Sarah had been promoted to guest relations supervisor. She carried herself differently now, with both humility and confidence. Every new hire went through her training program, where she told Malik's story not as a scandal, but as a lesson. Clara, the housekeeper, now served as the community liaison officer, the bridge between staff and management. Her name appeared in local magazines, celebrated for her courage to speak when silence was easier. And as for Richard Thompson, he had become a different man. No longer obsessed with image, he focused on purpose. He still managed the business, but with a heart that finally understood leadership wasn't about prestige. It was about people. One afternoon, Thompson stood in the hotel lobby, watching a group of young trainees take notes during orientation. He felt proud, not of profit margins, but of transformation. He whispered to himself, "Thank you, Malik." Soon other hotels began contacting the Regency for guidance. Industry leaders attended Project Dignity seminars. The American Hospitality Association even created a national award for ethical excellence, its first recipient, the Grand Regency Hotel. During the ceremony, the announcer's voice echoed through the grand hall. For proving that humility and accountability are not weaknesses, but strengths, for showing that quiet leadership can change an entire industry, we honor the Grand Regency Hotel and Mr. Malik Ward. The audience stood, clapping as Thompson and Malik walked onto the stage together. Cameras flashed, but neither man posed for fame. They stood side by side, symbols of what redemption truly looks like. When Malik took the microphone, he spoke slowly, clearly, his tone gentle but firm. "Success," he said, "isn't measured by how high you rise, but by how many people rise with you. I didn't want revenge. I wanted responsibility. And I've learned that when dignity leads the way, even mistakes can become miracles." The hall went silent. Then applause filled the air. Not wild, but steady, sincere. Later that evening, after the ceremony, Malik and Thompson sat together on a balcony overlooking the city lights. The air smelled of rain, a quiet reminder of the storm that once connected them. Thompson sighed. "You know, Malik, when I first saw your name in the headlines, I thought my career was over. But now, I realize it had to end, like the old version of it anyway." Malik smiled. "Sometimes the only way to rebuild is to break." Thompson nodded slowly. "I never told you this, but I visit your mother's scholarship recipients every month. Those kids, they talk about her like she's a legend." Malik looked down, his eyes soft. "She would have liked that. She always said, 'Leave the door open for the next person.'" "And you did," Thompson said quietly. "You opened it wide." They sat in silence for a while, watching the city pulse with life. Then Malik stood and extended his hand. "Let's keep it open. Together." Thompson smiled and shook it. Together. That night, Malik returned home and stood by the window looking out at the city. The lights reflected on the glass, turning his face into a blend of past and present. The man who had once been denied, now the man who had helped redefine. He thought about how easily anger could have led him down another path, a louder, harsher one. But he was grateful for the path he'd chosen instead, a path of control, compassion, and quiet fire. He whispered to himself, "Dignity isn't silence, it's strength." And as the city moved beneath him, Malik knew his work wasn't over. But he also knew something else. He had changed the rules. Not just for himself, but for everyone who would come after him. Because in a world that often rewards noise, he had proven that sometimes the most powerful voice is calm. 1 year later, the city had changed in small, subtle ways. But so had Malik Ward. He still walked with quiet confidence, still carried the calm that made people listen. But there was something new in his eyes. Peace. The kind that comes only after the storm has done its work. Across town, the Grand Regency Hotel shined brighter than ever. Tourists filled the lobby, business conferences returned, and the marble floors that once echoed judgment now reflected laughter and unity. Behind the front desk, a plaque read, "Project Dignity, founded in collaboration with Malik Ward." It was simple, golden, unmissable, and beneath it smaller letters read, "True luxury is respect." That morning, Malik walked into the hotel not as a guest or a critic, but as a partner. He was greeted by Sarah, now radiant with confidence. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. "Mr. Ward," she exclaimed. "You're just in time." "Everyone's waiting," he smiled. "Still on schedule, I see." This time, she grinned. "We made sure your name was the first one on the list." They shared a laugh as she led him toward the ballroom. Inside, the air buzzed with quiet excitement. Dozens of young scholarship recipients sat in neat rows, students from different cities, backgrounds, and dreams. They were the first class of the Dignity Foundation Scholars, each sponsored by Project Dignity. Malik stepped onto the stage to a warm wave of applause. Cameras clicked, but he didn't care for the flashes. He looked at the faces before him, hopeful, eager, shining, and began. "When I was your age," Malik said, "I didn't know what dignity meant. I thought it was pride or success or being right. But I learned something different." He paused, letting the room grow still. "Dignity," he continued, "is the strength to stay calm when the world tests your worth. It's walking away from hate without losing your voice. It's using what hurt you to help others." He looked out at the young faces. Some nodded, some wiped away quiet tears. "When I was denied a room in this hotel," he said softly, "I had two choices, to explode or to educate. And by choosing the second, I learned that silence, when guided by purpose, is not weakness. It's wisdom." The audience rose to their feet, but Malik raised a hand and smiled. "No applause," he said. "Save it for yourselves, for what you'll build after this." He glanced toward Clara, sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. She had come a long way, from a quiet housekeeper to a respected community leader. Malik continued, "You're here because someone believed in you. So believe in someone else. Because legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we send forward." The crowd erupted, and this time not in applause but in energy, in purpose. After the event ended, Malik stood near the stage as students lined up to thank him. A young man named Devin, the first scholarship recipient, handed him a small envelope. "It's a letter," Devin said shyly. "To your mom. She inspired this. I just wanted to thank her too." Malik's chest tightened. He took the envelope gently. "Thank you, son," he said softly. "You just made my day." When the hall finally emptied, Malik and Richard Thompson stood together near the exit, looking out over the ballroom. Thompson smiled. "You see what you started?" Malik chuckled. "You mean what we started?" Thompson nodded, emotion thick in his voice. "You were right about something. Power isn't in money or titles. It's in how you make people feel when they stand in front of you." Malik smiled, extending his hand. "Then let's keep making them feel seen." The two men shook hands. No cameras, no speeches, just quiet understanding. Back home, Malik sat on his balcony, the city's nightlights glowing beneath him. He opened Devin's letter and unfolded the page. "Dear Ms. Ward, your son changed my life. I never met you, but I feel like I know you. Because every time he talks about dignity, it sounds like love. I'm going to make sure the world keeps hearing it." Devin M. Malik closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek, but it wasn't sadness. It was gratitude. He looked up at the stars. "You see that, Ma?" he whispered. "You're still teaching." A few days later, Malik attended the official unveiling of the Lillian Ward Scholarship Center, named after his mother. The building stood near downtown Detroit, not far from the neighborhood where he had grown up. As he stood before the sign, memories flooded him. The nights his mother worked double shifts, the times she told him to hold his head high, the way she used to say, "Respect yourself." Even when the world doesn't, he smiled through tears. "We made it, Ma," he whispered. Reporters asked for quotes, but Malik waved them off. He didn't need to speak. The building, the students, the lives being changed, they were his words now. That night, Malik sat at his desk and opened his journal, the same one he had kept since college. On a fresh page, he wrote, "Silence gave me power. Grace gave me peace. Dignity gave me legacy." He closed the book and placed it beside a framed photograph of his mother. Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, as a reminder of where this all began. In a lobby, under a chandelier, with a single act of quiet defiance, he whispered to himself, "You can't erase prejudice overnight, but you can plant something stronger in its place." And as he looked out at the city lights shimmering like promises, Malik Ward smiled, because he finally understood. Revenge fades. Legacy lasts. It was early morning. A gentle light crept across Malik Ward's office, painting the walls gold. The city outside was just beginning to stir, the faint hum of traffic, the whistle of the first train, the slow birth of another day. On his desk lay the framed photo of his mother, and beside it a single invitation: the Grand Regency and Ward Innovations present, the first annual Dignity Award Gala. Malik smiled as he read it. A year ago, that same hotel had denied him a room. Now it was hosting an event in his honor, to celebrate kindness, humility, and equality in the workplace. He adjusted his tie, picked up his mother's photo, and whispered, You'd be proud, Ma. That evening, the Grand Regency's ballroom shimmered with soft gold lights and quiet jazz. The crowd wasn't just business leaders. It was teachers, nurses, janitors, students, and hotel staff. People who served others every day and now felt seen because one man refused to be silent in the face of disrespect. When Malik entered, the room rose to its feet. There was no cheering, just warm applause, the kind that feels like gratitude rather than fame. Richard Thompson took the stage first. His voice trembled slightly. 2 years ago, he began, I almost lost everything, not because of money, but because I had forgotten what humanity means. Tonight, we honor the man who reminded us. Please welcome Mr. Malik Ward. Malik walked slowly toward the microphone. The room fell quiet. He paused, scanning the crowd, faces of every color, every background. Some wore suits, some wore uniforms. All wore the same look, hope. He spoke softly. I never planned to become a symbol. I just wanted a good night's rest. Laughter rippled gently through the crowd. He smiled. But life doesn't always ask permission before it teaches you something. That night in this hotel, I learned that dignity is louder than anger. And I learned that silence, when used right, can rebuild what shouting can't. He looked at the staff members standing near the back, Sarah, Clara, and dozens of others. Change didn't come from me, he said. It came from people who chose honesty over comfort, from the ones who admitted mistakes and still showed up to make things better. His voice softened. If you want to know what real power looks like, it's not in titles or money. It's in how gently you can correct a world that wronged you. He stepped back from the microphone, and for a moment, the entire ballroom stood in complete silence. It wasn't empty. It was sacred. Then, applause. Long, unbroken, heartfelt. After the event, Thompson approached Malik holding a small wooden box. A token, he said quietly. Malik opened it. Inside was an old brass key, polished but aged. Thompson smiled. It's the master key to this hotel. I kept it for decades. Tonight it belongs to you, because without you this place wouldn't have its soul. Malik stared at the key, then closed the box and handed it back. Keep it, he said. It belongs here. Just make sure every door it opens leads to someone's dignity. Thompson's eyes glistened. I promise. Later that night, after the guests left, Malik asked to walk the halls alone. The hotel was quiet, just like the night everything began. He passed the lobby where Sarah once denied his reservation. Now, a sign near the desk read, All are welcome. Every story matters. He smiled, running a hand lightly along the polished counter. He walked further, past the elevators, to the suite he had once stayed in. The door was open for maintenance, empty and echoing softly. He stepped inside and stood by the same window where he had looked out at the city in anger months ago. Now there was only calm. In the glass he saw his reflection, older, steadier, at peace. Behind that reflection, the city lights shimmered, like constellations, and for the first time, he didn't feel the weight of what happened there. He felt gratitude. He whispered to the empty room, You taught me too. Then he turned off the light and walked away. Time moved forward. Malik's company grew into one of the most respected in the country. The Dignity Foundation expanded across borders. Every year, scholarships in his mother's name helped hundreds of students enter hospitality, business, and law, young leaders who promised to serve others with fairness and heart. At every graduation ceremony, a portrait of Lillian Ward hung above the stage. Below it, a quote, If you can't change a heart with anger, change it with grace. Malik often attended quietly, sitting in the back row, smiling as he watched students receive awards. He never took the stage anymore. He didn't need to. The story no longer belonged to him. It belonged to everyone who had learned from it. One spring morning, Malik sat at a park bench overlooking the river, a cup of coffee in hand. A young man approached, Devon, the first scholarship recipient, now a hotel manager himself. Mr. Ward, he said, smiling, I just wanted to tell you, We opened our first Dignity Hotel last month. We named the lobby after your mother. Malik's eyes softened. You did? Devin nodded. We wanted people to walk in and feel what you made us feel. Safe, seen, respected. Malik chuckled quietly. That's the dream. He looked out at the water, sunlight dancing on its surface. You know, Devin, people think legacy is something you leave behind. But I think it's something you plant while you're still here. Devin nodded. And you planted more than you know, sir? Malik smiled, eyes glimmering with peace. Then maybe it's time to rest. He leaned back, watching the breeze ripple the river, carrying reflections of the sky. The world around him kept moving, calm, beautiful, alive. And as the screen faded to black, Malik's voice lingered softly, almost like a prayer. Revenge ends a story, dignity writes a new one.